NBA championship. And without any further ado, we're going to jump right into it, our NBA draft preview. And we got Alec Walt backstage right now, coming in to join us. Diehard Boston Celtics fan, and they made it. So
let's go.
So, Alec, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. You know, that Game 7 got me a little nervous towards the end. But, hey, the Celtics are going to the finals. It's been a while since they've been there, so it's nice to them going back. They got a tough test. The Warriors are a great team, but the Celtics have earned it. They had 3 tough tests ahead of before, and they accomplished all 3 of them. You know, Brooklyn has 2 of the best players in basketball. They may not be the most complete team in the league, but, you know, playing KD and Kyrie is a challenge. They beat him in 4. Next, they played Giannis, who I believe is the best player in the NBA. You know, yes, no Chris Middleton, but, you know, they were able to get through that series. And then Jimmy Butler played out of his mind. His supporting cast didn't, you know, exactly play up to expectations in some of the important games towards the end. And the Celtics went on to win that series as well. So they've had 3 pretty tough matchups. I think they're ready for a team like the Warriors, but, you know, I'm excited to see that this team has accepted every challenge ahead of them so far in the postseason.
Absolutely. And I'll be completely honest, when I had you on the show a handful of weeks ago, I did not think that the Celtics were going to make it this far. I thought that they were going to be a quick out in the playoffs. Might have been my Knicks bias talking, but it's, you know, it kind of was just taking them from last year. But, you know, you got to give them credit. They're completely locked in. They're well coached too this year. I mean, you can feel the difference with Udoka as their head coach.
Oh, yeah.
I think the Derrick White trade ended up being magnificent for them. The Al Horford trade ended up being unbelievable before the season started. Those were just a handful of moves and obviously, you know, you got Jayson Tatum, who's becoming a top 5 player in the league. So it's really amazing that they were able to do it. I give all credit to them because I thought that I knew this series was going to go 7 games, had a feeling the series was going to go 7 games, but I thought Miami was going to pull it out. I thought they were almost destined to do it, but it's, you know, Boston was able to pull it out, which, you know, it was cool to see as a basketball fan, even though, you know, don't love the Celtics as a basketball fan. It is nice to see like the disparity and, you know, we're getting back to a team that was not so great last year, being able to jump back and, you know, make it to the NBA Finals this year. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. This team at the beginning or, you know, after the first month or 2 of the season, you know, there were times they were the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
I mean, this team was, you know, treading water and barely surviving there for the first couple months of the season. I mean, I remember early on thinking that this team didn't have a chance in the playoffs. You know, I was watching a team that didn't play team defense, was having a poor shot selection, wasn't moving the ball offensively, had a lineup that didn't really mesh, too many players on the bench that really weren't securing roles. And then all of a sudden, Ime shortened his bench. They improved it at the trade deadline, and the Celtics absolutely took off. I mean, the turnaround this year for the Celtics has been absolutely crazy. I mean, Tatum and Brown turned into true stars. Tatum became the alpha of the entire team and was dominating games. Marcus Smart was playing great defense. The team overall was moving the basketball well, playing team defense, getting off to early leads, not blowing leads towards the season that has been an issue sometimes here in the postseason. But the Celtics just started playing much better basketball and responding extremely well to Ime Udoka. I mean, when you watch Udoka, I mean, I feel like whether they're winning or losing, you're kind of seeing the same person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I give him a lot of credit for is he's a first-year coach, and he's in a market like Boston. And when he walked into the locker room after winning the Eastern Conference Finals, like, yes, he was clearly excited, but he made the point. He's like, this organization doesn't win Eastern Conference Finals. You know, we got to win championships. And,
Yeah.
you know, I like that a lot because he's saying, like, celebrate now, but the job's not done.
Yep.
And to get that out of your head coach to, you know, have that to go into your locker room after a huge win like that and have the respect from the players that you're coaching to say something like that after a huge win shows a lot. But, you know, this team clearly is not done, and they know there's 4 more wins ahead of them against a really good team.
Oh, absolutely. I think that that's a huge difference maker. I think that the kind of poise that Udoka has kind of shown throughout this entire season has been a veteran type leadership that you wouldn't expect from a first year head coach. But I mean, he's been around the game forever. He was an NBA player for a long time. He was an assistant under Pop. He was an assistant. He bounced around a bunch of times. He's seen a lot. So he was ready for the challenge. And I think that it was a tremendous move. And then, some of the guys that Brad Stevens was able to pick up at the deadline too. And, before the season started too, Derrick White, I think, was a huge addition. Marcus Smart, I mean, obviously winning Defensive Player of the Year this year. I think that he kind of transcended his game in a way that helped the team a lot too, because, years past saw a lot of like 3-ball chucking and a lot of ISO ball out of Marcus Smart. And I felt like this season watching him, he knows his role. He's always been a great, scrappy defensive player, but on the offensive end, I feel like he kind of knows his role now. He's the backup option, and he lets Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum run the show, which he should, and he runs the show on defense. So I think that's a big thing, that's kind of, putting their egos to the side and kind of becoming a much better franchise because of it.
Yeah, I mean, think about the play that reminds me the most about Smart really changing his game. And I know there's a lot of different examples I can use here, but game 1 against the Nets, the clock was expiring. Smart got the ball behind the perimeter, faked the 3, passed it to Tatum before he spun and laid it in for the game-winning shot.
Yep.
I mean, if Smart shot that, they would not have won game 1.
Yeah.
And I thought when he faked it, I panicked a little bit because I had a weird feeling he was going to take that shot, but that showed great court awareness for him to pass that ball. I mean, he did make the quote that got a lot of criticism, like, this team runs on me, which, Jayson Tatum's the best player on the court at times, and that's helped the Celtics win a lot of games here in the postseason. But, when Smart doesn't turn the ball over, when Smart locks down one of the best players on the opposing team, clearly switch a lot defensively, I think he's going to cover a lot of Steph Curry here in the NBA Finals. He's efficient from behind the 3-point line. He's making smart passes. I mean, when he's not chucking a bunch of threes and turning the ball over, it makes a huge difference for this team. Now, obviously, I don't think the team runs on him, but when his decision-making and defensive impact and, 3-point shot making does make a huge difference in the outcome of that basketball game.
Yeah, and that was almost like the spark that kind of turned the season around, was when Marcus Smart, said that, and they had the talk in the locker room and all that kind of stuff. Who knows what was said in that locker room, but whatever was said was really kind of switched the gears in the right direction. I think everybody kind of got the point. I saw it, when that happened at the beginning of the season, they were struggling, and I saw something like that. I'm just like, okay, like this team, it doesn't seem like they're going to do that much this year. They're imploding a little bit, and they completely turned around. You got to give them a ton of credit, and they went through everybody in the East. You can argue, that the Bucks didn't have Middleton and everybody, but they beat everybody that they needed to beat, and they beat a fully healthy Heat team. I mean, Tyler Hero was hurt for a little bit, Kyle Lowry was hurt for a little bit, but regardless, they deserved it. And I think that the same thing with the Warriors too. The Warriors really grinded their way to the finals, and that's why I think this series is going to be really good. I'm excited to see what comes out of it. You got a team with very minimal playoff exposure versus a team with a ton of playoff exposure, but on the other hand, you got a team that's been as red hot as you possibly can be versus a team that started off red hot, kind of cooled down a little bit, and is getting hot again. But there's no doubt that the Celtics are a little bit hotter than the Warriors are. So it's going to be a real battle between a red hot team and an experienced team, which I think is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's why this is such a big challenge, because the Warriors know exactly what to expect. And, when it comes to the magnitude of the NBA Finals, that just simply isn't something anyone in Boston, even in a 30 plus, late 30s guy like Al Horford, he's never experienced something like that. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. And, obviously going into game one of this series, it's in San Francisco. So the Celtics played game 7 in Miami. The Warriors only played 5 games in their series against the Mavericks. So the Celtics traveled to Miami, then traveled to San Francisco, and played 2 more games than the Warriors did in the conference finals. So, whenever anyone asks me the question about rest, with the NBA, it doesn't really concern me because they have rest periods throughout the season. Sometimes it's scheduled, throughout the year for certain players. And it's also a 7-game series. So even if you start cold or struggle game 1, you have 6 more games to potentially come back and win the series. And this team also has been to NBA championships multiple times. So, obviously fatigue is something that I'm going to have to keep an eye on early in this series, because the Celtics doing a lot of traveling and added a lot of extra miles on their legs in an extremely physical series against a very physical team in the Miami Heat. So, that is obviously something that I'm going to have to keep an eye on here early in the series. But, the Celtics are the only team in the NBA above 500 against the Warriors since 2014. Brad Stevens, when he was coaching the Boston Celtics, always seemed very prepared to play that team. Now, obviously, they had some of their blowout wins. I know one specifically where they had Kevin Durant, came to Boston and absolutely destroyed the Boston Celtics. But this is a team that has played the Warriors very well. And, lineups are going to be interesting because the Warriors love to play small. But this matchup's going to be great because I do think the Celtics are ready and do have some of the matchups that they can play well with this team.
Absolutely. Who do you think are a few of the X factors on the Celtics that maybe defensive matchup X factors, or anybody you could see that's kind of getting written off that could go off?
I mean, I feel like this is an easy one to begin with, but if Draymond's going to be on Tatum, there are going to be games Brown needs to be the number 1 scorer.
Yeah.
And I know I don't want to say Jaylen Brown is an X factor, because obviously Jaylen Brown's one of the best players on this team. But if Tatum has to go through that matchup, there were times throughout the last series that when Tatum was cold, Brown was cold. Yeah. That cannot happen in the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
At all. Number 2, the health of Robert Williams. Obviously with them playing small ball lineup with Draymond playing the 5, there may be some times throughout the game where we may be at a disadvantage with Williams on the court. But when you play a team like the Golden State Warriors, you cannot give them extra opportunities. Yeah. And the Celtics against the Heat gave up a lot of offensive rebounds. There were a lot of situations when Williams was off the court that the Heat were driving to get offensive rebounds. They were playing physical in the paint over guys like Horford and Tatum and Williams, with Tuckers and Adebayo and guys like that, to get those offensive boards to create more opportunities for the Miami Heat. Now, luckily for the Celtics playing a Miami Heat team outside of Jimmy Butler, you didn't really know what you were getting out of his supporting cast. If Steph Curry goes off in this series and goes off like an Antetokounmpo or, a Jimmy Butler, with who he has around him, the Celtics are not going to win that series. I mean, the supporting cast the Warriors have with Thompson, Wiggins, Poole, and Draymond is way better than the supporting cast of any star player the Celtics have seen in this series. So if you give them extra opportunities and let Clay and Steph make those 3-point shots, and say that adds up to 5 extra 3-point shots, that's how you lose those 3-point games in the fourth quarter. And I think it's going to be huge in this series, because if he can stay healthy and he can get some of those boards and end those possessions for the Warriors, I mean, they're going to have to do it. And Al Horford's older. He's not someone who can play as physical in the paint. Like, Draymond will get dirty with them and get offensive boards and kick it back out to the other players on the team. So that's going to be something I monitor a lot. And obviously, Marcus Smart, he is who I expect to be glued to Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Steph Curry's the guy I expect to take multiple 3-point shots in this series. When you look around the matchups, the Celtics are much bigger at multiple positions. he has a major size advantage, length advantage over Curry. Now, Curry can shoot over anyone, and I'm not saying the task is very easy. That's why Steph Curry, at the end of the day, could go down as a potential top 10 player in NBA history when his career is over.
Yeah.
But, you know, if Celtics going to win this series, Smart's going to have to play like the defensive player of the year. Because if he does it and Curry goes off and the Warriors start raining 3-point shots, that's how they beat you. And they've done it before in the NBA Finals.
That's for sure. And I think that's pretty much a telltale sign that the Warriors are going to be locked in is if they're getting a great scoring from their supporting cast, and if Curry's hitting threes, all that kind of stuff, it's going to be very difficult to beat them. But obviously you never know. I think that the Celtics have kind of proved a lot of people wrong. But I agree with you that they would need an all-out supporting cast. They need Jaylen Brown to show up. They need Marcus Smart to show up. They need a lot. They need everybody to show up, to be completely honest with you. I think Robert Williams has to show up, because Kevon Looney has been quietly one of the better players in the Western Conference Finals too. So I think that somebody's got to match up with him. I think that Al Horford and Draymond Green is going to be a good matchup. But as you were saying, Horford getting up there in age, probably won't be able to stay in as long as Draymond is, and Grant Williams as well. I think that Grant Williams, the big thing I noticed too during the playoffs is the team was playing their best when Grant Williams was on the floor, putting up points. I think that was one big thing. I think if Grant Williams, he doesn't necessarily have to be the scorer, but if Grant Williams is on the court facilitating, he's a very underrated player. I think, he can.
He's the type of guy who's at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And he doesn't turn the ball over. I feel like early in his career, he struggled so much from three that teams would set up their defense, giving him space on the perimeter and almost allowing him to take the shot.
Yeah.
Because at times, he wasn't really shooting at a high percentage from three. They would just, if it goes in, fine, we gave it to him. But a lot of teams were just almost forcing him to take the three. He has a 3-point shot now.
Does.
And if teams start respecting him from the perimeter, it opens up a lot more possibilities for players in this offense. So, like we've seen, it can't just be Jayson Tatum. We've seen Jayson Tatum be the best player on the court in multiple games throughout this postseason. And, specifically if that Jayson Tatum we saw towards the end of the Milwaukee series was absolutely disgusting. Probably the best version of Jayson Tatum I've ever seen in a postseason game. So we're going to need that version of Tatum if we want to keep up with Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. But, there's going to be games where the Celtics have to drop, 115, 120. And that's going to take, even Tatum could drop even 50 and they still got to find 70 points from other guys on the court. So
yeah,
they're going to be asked to drop a lot of points here in this upcoming series. Stopping it's going to be huge.
For sure, because, the Celtics are a good defensive team, but the Warriors are going to put up points. That. Yeah. They got scores coming from everywhere, and that's why I think it's going to be the most interesting thing is, the Warriors have secondary scores. They got plenty of secondary scores. The moral of the story is going to be, can the Celtics get the secondary scoring that, the Warriors have, and to an extended degree, because, just Jayson Tatum will have an off night. You can't expect him. Series goes 5-6 games at least. You can't expect him to be on every single night. He's going to have an off night and stuff. And those are the days that Jaylen Brown's got to step up. Those are the days that Marcus Smart's got to step up. Robert Williams, all of them. Al Horford, and I think that those are all big key things. It's always interesting for the NBA Finals because you don't see the Eastern West teams match up that much during the regular season. You don't know how they'll match up against each other very much. But I think that this is just going to be a very interesting series that I think could go a variety of different ways. I could see the Warriors completely dominating. I could see the Celtics being the underdogs and just giving them fits. And we just don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, the Celtics can throw them a lot of different looks. I mean, defensively, they pretty much outmatch them in almost every position. I mean, Smart's bigger than Curry. I think in their win now lineup, say, Brown's bigger than Clay and Poole, about the same size as Wiggins, pretty much.
Yeah.
So the Celtics have some bodies they can move around the perimeter. I think we're going to see lineups where the Celtics play smaller, which is why you mentioned Grant Williams. I think he's going to be huge in this upcoming series. But yeah, I mean, the thing with the Celtics is they're going to have to find a way to win on the road. And I know that sounds incredibly basic, but the Warriors have at least one road victory in 37 straight playoff series, which means if the Celtics want to win the NBA Finals, they're going to have to at least split the series in San Francisco. Keep an eye on that, because if the Celtics come back to Boston and they're potentially down, 2-0, they could fall into a trap pretty early. But I mean, if the Celtics don't run into those like freezing cold third quarter of game one spells, I mean, they're going to be able to keep up with them.
Yeah.
And if they can force turnovers and turn this into a full court game, I think the Celtics are going to win the series.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If they come out with the right game plan, I completely agree with you. They can lose both games in San Francisco. If they lose both, if they go down 2-0 going back to Boston, it's the series. It's not over, but it's not looking good in any bit. I think that they have to at the very least split. And if they were to somehow win both games, that would be every Boston's fan's dream. But I think that their main goal is they got to split. They got to win one of those two games in San Francisco, because Golden State's also been one of the biggest home court advantages in basketball over the past however many years. So I think that's a big reason why they have won so many titles, a big reason why they've been so dominant. I mean, the season where they made the 73 where they were 73-9, broke the record. I'm pretty sure they were 39-2 at home that season. I'm pretty sure they only had 2 losses at home.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously they play in a different home now, but they moved out of Oracle Arena, but still same kind of situation. They're comfortable at home. It's the same crew. It's Steph and Clay. And I think that Clay is kind of starting to get his feet underneath him too. He's not the Klay Thompson of old. Can't really expect him to be the Klay Thompson of old after missing 2 whole seasons, basically due to injury. But, Draymond's got to stay on the court too. That's another big thing. Never know when he's going to get suspended. Never know when he's going to get foul out of the game. So that's going to be another interesting one to watch out for. But I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think one thing to mention real quick is Derrick White did take an elbow to the head towards the end of Game 7. I think it was Adebayo that gave him a good shot there. But one thing I'm optimistic about is I think we're seeing right now the best version of Derrick White throughout this entire postseason.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been able to watch every single Celtics game, but I think we're seeing the most effective version of him right now. Mm-hmm. And the reason why that's a good sign for the Celtics is because if you're Ime and you say, foul troubles aren't an issue, which, very easily could be a factor in this, but it's the fourth quarter and you're trying to match up a team against Curry, Poole, Thompson, Wiggins, and Draymond. Because if they need to go out with 5 dudes, that's who the Warriors are matching them up against with. If I'm the Celtics, I'm obviously going Smart, Brown, Tatum. And if they're going to go that small, I feel like the next guy in is probably Derrick White. And then one of the 2 big men, probably Horford due to Williams' injury. And that's probably what you're going to match up with Ime Udoka. And if I'm the Celtics and I'm, needing a guy like Derrick White to step up in that offense, I mean, he's been playing. He probably has been playing the best version I've seen of him throughout this entire postseason. And if he can make smart passes, play good defense, play smart on the perimeter, communicate well with Marcus Smart specifically, that duo is nasty defensively to pair with someone like Jaylen Brown. The Celtics can match what the Warriors' best lineup is, which is why I'm optimistic in this series.
Absolutely. I think that, since they traded for Derrick White, he's been a huge difference maker. It doesn't even show up on the stat sheet as much as it shows up in plain sight when you watch the games, how much of big impact this guy is, how good of a player he is too. He's been a very underrated player with the Spurs over the last several years, and I think that the trade for him kind of like turned the tide a bit for the Celtics too. I think that he was a huge addition, one of the bigger pieces that that is going to be a key player to watch out for in this series. I think that if he's going off, the Celtics have a very good chance of pulling out the series. But now,
his fadeaway jumper is nice.
It absolutely is. It's insane. And he's a gritty player too. Drives to the hoop. He does everything. He does everything the right way. It's fun to watch him play. He's just a really good. He's a really smart player. That's the biggest thing.
I've been impressed. Good job by Brad getting him, because day one it was like he's been with the team the whole year.
Yeah, no, exactly. He jumped in and he fit in perfectly, honestly, which was the key. So now the tough question comes in: who do you have winning the series, and in how many games?
Game 7 Celtics, I guess, has to be a theme this year.
Yep.
Obviously, just winning that on the road again is going to be one major challenge. But, when I look at this series, I see 7 games written all over it. I've been saying Celtics in 7 from the start. Obviously, early on is going to be key, because the Celtics are flying here, there, and everywhere, going home from Miami and over across the country to San Francisco for the game 1 on Thursday, needing to play 2 extra games than the Warriors in the conference finals is something that definitely we need to keep an eye on. But, we're talking about the most experienced, team that's contending for the last, 8+ years, going up against a team that has not been there. Now, obviously, the Celtics can defend what the Warriors provide. The Celtics can score, with Jayson Tatum at times being the best player on the court. I see this series not being anything similar to what we saw in the Eastern Conference Finals. In the Eastern Conference Finals, we saw one team take over, then we saw another team take over. We didn't really see multiple lead changes and close games to the finish, really, outside of the Heat finding a way to come back in the final 2 minutes of Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Final. I think this will be a much closer series. I think this will be an absolute battle. I think we're seeing 2 of the best coaches in the NBA, take course right now, with the future face of basketball in Jayson Tatum and one of the current faces of this era in Steph Curry. So, I think this game has 7. I think this series has 7 games written all over it. I think both teams are going to have their games offensively where they go absolutely off. And I don't see any reason why this series can't go long. I'd be shocked if it was like 4. I don't think we're seeing a sweep in any way. Obviously, I'm seeing a lot of people say Warriors in 6, which is a popular pick, which means they'd be winning the series in Boston. So hopefully whoever goes to that game in the TD Garden of Game 6, if necessary, is going absolutely ballistic. But, I believe in what the Celtics are doing. This is a team that's had past success against the Warriors. They split, of course, this past season, but the only team above 500 against them, Brad Stevens knew something the rest of the league didn't, and hopefully he's passing that information along to Ime Udoka for this upcoming series. So I expect a battle. I expect 7 games. I think we're going to truly see the 2 best teams in the East and the West take off in this series. So Celtics in 7 is my pick for the NBA Finals.
Absolutely. And I think what, like you were saying, Warriors in 6 is definitely the common way to go. I think that's the safest bet. My personal one, I see it going 6 or 7 games. I'm going to say Warriors in 7 to be a little bit different. But again, as we were saying before, if I was a betting man, I would have been betting against the Celtics for pretty much every one of these series, and I would have lost a bunch of money. So it's a good thing that I'm not, honestly, because I didn't think that they were going to make it this far. So it would not shock me if they end up winning it all.